Yeah, it's definitely changed. Okay, check. Okay, now it's coming through. All right. I tell y'all what, man. I do not enjoy bad days, and I'm having one. But we're here regardless. I tried to go live from StreamYard. Um, I've been trying to go live from StreamYard since about 6:50, and it's 7:55. So you could imagine, and it's not just trying from StreamYard. I also tried to go live from YouTube itself, just from YouTube. Um, but since everybody sucks now, uh, everything else has to suck with us. Regardless, we are here to talk about the religion of monetary value, and we are here to get into some truth regarding this religion that everybody subscribed to, even people that think they are not subscribed to it, um, have seemingly, such an affinity for it. Why are all these things pinned that should not be pinned? Um, and let me also cue up the image, cue up the what's it called, thumbnail. There we go. Add to stage. Because this is pretty boss right here. So basically, you got the religion of monetary value, part 7, and we got this burrito. Okay, there is some talk going on right now that involves the question: why the hell are burritos $20? Why is everything so expensive and like marketed as if it's luxury? Why are burritos marketed as if they're luxury? Why are people going on podcasts and news stations and talking about um, eating out no matter where you go is luxury, acting as if the reason why people are suffering is because all of them are just eating out too much. And we're going to start today's episode off actually by not reacting, but checking out this clip from one sec. Hold on. There we go. And I need to rewind it. It started playing automatically when I click the share screen. There we go. Okay. This is actually from Coach Collins' video, but he found the clip that it's Tim Dillon. Tim Dillon is talking about um, Kevin O'Leary saying uh, that that let me see, is it in the, yeah, him saying it is in the thing. So let me just go ahead and back this up a little bit more so that we get the full context. Kevin O'Leary talking about how we we're stupid for eating lunch. Check it out.
Eating a lunch. Kevin O'Leary.
Can't stand it when I see kids that are making 70 grand a year spending $28 for lunch. I mean, that's just stupid. It's just, think about that in the context of that being put into an index and making 8 to 10% a year for the next 50 years.
Right. So here's for the next 50 years, by the way, because everyone's got a 50-year plan. Doesn't everyone have a 50-year plan? When you go to get a panini, don't you say, I'd rather put this money in my index fund over the next 50 years? Here's the problem with this. Number one, lunch costs $28 now. That's what it costs. Lunch is expensive. It's expensive. It's not cheap. If you work in an office and they're paying you $70,000 a year, not because you're worth that or because they're electing to pay you $70,000 a year, you're taking that because it's an available job. Now, is that a true statement of your value as an employee? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. It's case specific. But he's using the example of somebody who's getting paid $70,000 a year. So that person now either has to make lunch and bring it to the office, which I'm not saying is a terrible thought. But if that person wants to go and purchase a lunch, a salad, a sandwich, a yogurt parfait plus a coffee, he's basically saying that if you're spending $28 on lunch, you're some kind of crackhead. That's what he's saying. You're like a crackhead who's financially irresponsible.
Facts. Facts. Truer words have rarely been offered to the world. Guys, if you are here, you are in for real conversations, okay? Welcome back to the Inner Storyteller. Welcome back to your real life. We talk about natural law, religion, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the great. We talk about money, anarchy, culture, and how mankind is manipulated from the shadows by forces that do not have our best interests at heart, perhaps because they are completely evil. But I say we talk about religion. We are not bashing faith systems here. We are not calling people names for having a religion. We are simply examining the psychological affects and effects of the stories that we have the most faith in, the ones that we have the most stake in, and how those stories help shape society. And that examination has to sit right alongside an honest look at the current human condition, which is slavery. Government is slavery, good people. And the question that we always have to return to, at least on this channel, is what can actually be improved with a proper understanding of the inner storyteller and how it works. So, Kevin O'Leary, Shark Tank host, among a whole lot of other titles that boil down to capitalist. Shark Tank, a show that presents itself as a celebration of American entrepreneurial spirit and honest competition. He made a comment in response to the talk going on around cost of living. What a stupid phrase, right? Doesn't cost any, you, you know, it doesn't cost you anything. You didn't even ask to be here. You didn't know how to express a question until you were here for years, or at least a year. Um, you know, this comment that he made is very telling. Not just of him. This is not a video. I'm not getting ready to spend an hour talking about Kevin O'Leary like he's important or something. But basically, let me restate the quote because it's very telling about how the mind works, how the religion of monetary value is powered. Okay? So he says, quote, I can't stand it when I see kids making 70 grand a year spending $28 for lunch. I mean, that's just stupid. Think about that in the context of that being put into an index and making 8 to 10% every year for the next 50 years. 50 years. He wants the person buying lunch, right, to think about their burrito money compounding in an index over the next 50 years. Their lunch money, essentially. That framing is what we have to directly address. First of all, nobody has a 50-year plan, right? Tim Dillon made that joke. Nobody's and when, you know, the kind of people like Kevin O'Leary were doing that, really they weren't really even doing it. They weren't doing it for real. They weren't, sticking to it. Nobody has a 50-year plan. That's the kind of flippant you should expect to know to do this and to everybody's doing it way that he mentions, put into an index, and in the context of that being put into an index, and you getting 8 to 10% back for every year for 8 to 10 years. Very few people had a 50-year plan when that kind of thinking was popular. The financial planning horizon that assumes stable employment, assumes stable returns, assumes stable health, stable housing costs, stable political environment. Over 5 decades, that is not the reality the person making 70 grand a year is living in, right? That's the reality of someone whose position, in the network game is already secured enough that 50 years feels like a reasonable unit of time to plan around. Because the network game is what we are really playing in capitalist mindset. We're playing the network game. Okay, it's not really just the money game. Within the money game, which is a larger game, the network game is really where things move. Now, for everyone else, right? For everyone else out there, the question just is, what can I afford for lunch? Right? It's not what am I planning for, to get a return from in 50 years. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that people like O'Leary miss. The food itself is natural and essential to continued life. The money itself isn't real. Never has been. I cannot necessarily wait 50 years to pay for lunch if I have to pay for lunch to eat it, that is. The burrito exists in the present moment. The index fund exists in the religion of monetary value only. And the religion of monetary value, as we have established in this series, is built on the story that the symbol is the real thing. When the actual real thing is the food, the labor, the intellectual property or ideas, the human body or human bodies, the work, right? The knowledge and the work that gets the project done or solves the problem is the only real thing. And uh I think it was Candace. Candace was covering people talking about this, and she pulled up Dan Crenshaw's tweet about it. Dan Crenshaw echoed the same sentiment as O'Leary on social media with his take that basically people should eat ramen, quote, like the rest of us, like the rest of us college. And we got to take care of business, right? And it's funny that he chose to say ramen because that probably came from a real place in his tweet. He probably, if he authors his own tweets or if he authored that one for real, um, he probably said ramen because of a real experience that either he had or knew about. And I want to address that ramen comment explicitly because even ramen is up. It's up by a substantial percentage from where it was when he was in school, possibly 50 years ago, his old ass. More importantly, lunch costs what it costs right now. Things are just expensive. That's the reality, right? You can't tell the difference between stopping and getting a quick snack from Panera Bread and eating a 5-course meal at Roof Chris. It all costs the exact same. An arm and a leg. If you want something at least a little bit less processed, a little bit healthy, a little bit more local, maybe, than the slop that you can get at the fast, or fast casual chain that claims organic this and that, then then you're paying $30 for one person. It just is what it is. 33.50 if you want extra sauce. you know, it's not a luxury. That's just the consumption choice. That is the current price of a meal. Not really, but in the game, network game, that is the price of the meal. The person making $70,000 who buys that lunch is not being irresponsible, Mr. O'Leary, Mr. Crenshaw. They are accurately perceiving the economic reality that they are living inside of and making a rational decision within it to eat, even though times are hard, because they have work to do. The alternative, making lunch at home somehow, requires time, energy, and grocery expenses. And newsflash, groceries are expensive as hell too now, right? The grocery store is robbing the people just as much as Panera Bread. And I'm joking about Panera Bread, allegedly joking, haha, he, ha. Okay, they're not really robbing people. Panera Bread is a business name, not a person's name. Okay. Anyway, legal stuff out of the picture. The time spent cooking, the time spent packing the lunch, the time spent not sleeping is time that could be spent building something or simply being human for 30 minutes, right? Before spending 8 hours producing value for someone else's project, getting paid pennies on a dollar. It's funny, um, sometimes I write these scripts and I come up with these ideas. And I just know, I think to myself, I'm like, if this blows up, there's going to be people that are confused. Like, is he actually an anarchist or is he calling for money to be fair? Like, what is he doing? Yeah, no, I do not believe in money at all. But you got to live in the world, or you can choose death. That's a choice. But I don't choose starvation right now. I don't choose that. So within the bubble of money is legitimate, we got to talk about these things in a way people can understand. And here's the double standard that I want to point out. He's not Kevin O'Leary is not implying the 50-year index fund standard to the United States military budget, is he? He's not commenting on the irresponsibility of so-called deficit spending. These guys print money, but it's called deficit spending that has contributed directly to the inflation, making the $28 lunch a necessity for people that eat lunch. He is not examining the network of investment firms that his wealth is embedded in and asking whether that network extraction from ordinary consumer markets has anything to do with why lunch costs what it costs the person earning 70 grand a year. Also, 70 grand a year is far above the poverty line. Just want to say, a lot of people under that mark. Now, the religion of man's authority, okay, the father of all religion. When the religion of man's authority spends its money haphazardly, when the government decides that a particular expenditure is necessary to protect the freedom of somebody or something like that, the sorting function in the inner storyteller of people like Kevin O'Leary files that decision by the government into the necessary and legitimate drawer before any examination can really occur. There's no cost benefit analysis being thrown at the administration by these types. No 50-year horizon applied to the defense budget, right? because authority says, well, it's necessary. It's necessary. You should Google how much it costs per year just to test weapons. You should Google that. Um, uh, when the ordinary person spends on food, their the basic act of eating during the 8 hours that they spend at the job. Suddenly, these people think that there's a moral problem with these people because they want to eat, right? You should be you should be buckling down until you're making at least $100 million a year. No food for you. Right? That's how some of these capitalists want us to think is their mindset, because we want to be, because they know we want to be like them even if we hate them. We're something in a lot of human beings is really itching to know what their secret sauce is so that they can become like them and get them hundred millions and millions of dollars. They know that. So they want us to think that their actual mindset is you need to just keep your face in the books and keep your, you know, feet to the grind and keep grinding, keep studying, work, 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 productivity, 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 productivity. Prove yourself to us so that we choose to either give you an avenue or give you a line of credit or give you an opportunity. Um, it's not really what they think, but they want us to believe they do. Now, of course, there's a litany of other things that they want us to think. And chief among them is accumulation is virtue. They really want us to believe that the more you have, the more virtuous of a person you are. And so, once you think that, then expenditure requires justification, right? And when you're morally questioning somebody who makes 70 grand a year, why are they eating this burrito when they know it costs $28? Then the $28 lunch becomes evidence of a character defect, because you're supposed to believe that accumulation is the value, not the food. The actual food that keeps you alive, right? Helps you heal, helps you breathe, all of these things. That helps clean your blood depending on what you eat. That value we're not even going to call that value. The accumulation of the monetary value. That's the ticket for these people. The people most vocally applying fiscal scrutiny to the working person's lunch are the same people that most loudly champion spending the same money on war, military integration, foreign aid packages that run into the hundreds of billions of dollars given to a little country in the Middle East with a bunch of people running around in tiny hats. They have no criticism when their preferred administration spends irresponsibly on their behalf. And that double standard is not accidental. It is the two religions, the religion of monetary value and the religion of man's authority, mommy and daddy religion, working together exactly as designed. The government's spending is, again, filed into the legitimate and necessary drawer. The civilians' spending is filed into the personal responsibility defect drawer. And the filing happens before thought even arrives in the inner storyteller, because the inner storyteller pulls on these association categories at the speed of thought. Okay? There is something underneath the 50-year index fund comment that Kevin O'Leary did not explicitly say, but that the logic of the position that he has reveals. These people are trying to replace us with technology, right? Tim Dillon also points that out. They are not holding this intention as a secret, right? We can see the automation of labor. You walk into a Quick Trip gas station and you see the little robot mopping the floor, right? You go to any um, shopping place and self checkout is bigger sections of self checkout, less and less real people. Um, the automation of labor, the elimination of human workers from production processes, the replacement of human judgment with algorithmic systems, right? You have algorithms checking your resume, you have algorithms checking your content, whether or not it should be pushed out, even if people are liking it in the first 10 minutes, like you should. You should like the video in the first 10 minutes of you watching. Please like the video. um, shameless plug there. You see, they are getting the arms that flip the burgers, getting the robots in line, ready to just walk in as soon as they kick us out. All the little burger flipper hands, arms, are ready. They're ready to be bolted to the floor right where the burger flipping happens. And it's openly discussed in the investment class on camera as progress, efficiency, and inevitability. Now, in that pursuit, in the move towards a workforce that is maximally productive, minimally expensive, and completely compliant without using the bathroom, everything that is human becomes an obstacle, right? Things like eating, things like needing sleep, needing rest, needing peace, needing to be away from stress for certain amounts of periods of time, and needing enough time to stop stressing yourself out in your own mind so that you can actually enjoy the peace. Using the bathroom, needing water, sweating, being nervous, feeling stress, farting, flirting, getting sick, having a family, having more people attached to you, your time, wanting a lunch break that costs $28. All of it is a friction now. Everything human. All of it is a waste from the perspective of a person working a system that has decided that the human being is a temporarily necessary but ultimately replaceable input in the production process that will make him rich. Now, what they want is quiet. What they want is useful. What they want is robotic, compliant participation in their project. The 50-year index fund comment is not financial advice. It is an expression of the ideal human behavior from the perspective of the system that O'Leary represents. Put the money in the fund. Don't spend it on yourself. Defer, accumulate. Serves the system's long term interests at the expense of your own present moment human needs. The communist label for anyone who questions this, if you question this, you're a communist, they say. Capitalists will say. The communist word fires into the dangerous drawer. The observation that the system is producing conditions where working people cannot afford to eat never really gets examined because the label of, I don't want to be called a communist, influences our behavior and tells us to be quiet when we want to have these discussions, online, or even amongst people. Let's say you have a super conservative family, you want to bring up some of these points like, yo, this don't make sense. Dad, uncle, somebody, nephew. What do you think about that? I know you're super right leaning on these economic issues. What do you look at this Look at this. Look, everything sucks. Um, Money's not real. You know, are they gonna crash out, call you communists? Because many people will. And the doctrine that they describe makes a system that does not actually exist. What they describe is honest competition, right? They say capitalism is honest competition where the best product wins, where the hard work and innovation determines the outcomes, where consumer choice is the mechanism of accountability. And that description requires genuine competition to be real, but it isn't, only in certain ways. Independent journalist Ian Carroll, shout out to Ian Carroll, friend of the show, he followed the money on products in standard American grocery stores, almost all of them. He created an app that, you know, reveals this information. I have the app, I just don't use it because we know how to shop in the grocery store. But anyway, he showed the truth about who owns these products with receipts, all of the screenshots, the admissions directly from company websites. Um, he documented that the majority of the brands on the shelf are owned by or equity linked to the same small set of investment firms. Let's say codename BlackRock. The 16 different bread brands offering the appearance of consumer choice is not actually competition, is it? They're not competitors. They are departments of the same entity at the top. Now, the consumer can pick any loaf. Their choice, though, does not actually distribute power between competing interests because the interests are already unified at the ownership level before the consumer walks in to make that choice. And this pattern runs across every major consumer category. We're talking about housing, appliances, cleaning products, obviously household products, media, pharmaceutical companies. The names are different, but the ownership structures, um, the ownership structures coverage at the same small set of institutional investment level. And the blender that costs $350 and then breaks 2 years later is not the product of honest competition, right? Producing the best quality. It's the product of a network game producing whatever the margins the network want to exist and maintaining those margins. Because human beings are going to create regardless and they're going to improve on their creations regardless. But the network game creates the margins for what's acceptable to be mass distributed and what stays as a personal and sometimes secret invention for the person who loves inventing things. The competition is not what is happening in the market of public opinion. It's what's happening in the field of networks and deals. The product that wins, therefore, is not primarily the product consumers prefer. It's the product that was funded, distributed, self positioned, and surfaced by the network that controls the entire infrastructure of consumer culture around the world. Consumer choice is, is the last step in a process that was largely determined before anyone walked into the store. Better network, you get more money. Even with no sales, by the way, right? How many companies are just shell companies with no value beyond hiding money movements and funding various operations? They no money moves, and it just rolling in dough. How many companies are like that? The entire, excuse me, the entire honest truth about the who you know versus what you know, the who you do it for versus how well you do it, that remains deliberately absent from the sermon and the pulpit of the priest class of the religion of monetary value when they try to get us to believe certain narratives. And let's look back at the insult that they throw at anybody questioning this whole thing. They say, "You're a commie." Under communism is capitalism. And any capitalist will tell you this. Under communism is capitalism. Okay? And under capitalism, what they won't tell you is under capitalism is a bit of socialism. Think about it. Under all of it is the religion of monetary value. And under the religion of monetary value is the existence of the wannabe order giver class using word magic to maintain the fiction that the game is honest and that monetary value is real. And here's the logical endpoint that nobody who preaches the doctrine of the religion of monetary value is willing to actually name out loud. If a company wins the capitalist game, let's say a company wins, BlackRock, codename BlackRock, wins one day. If through market competition a single entity acquires a dominant position across industries, that entity acquires the functional power of a government without the name, as well as enough money to target any individual with the threat of violence or the threat of whatever, blackmail, whatever, what have you. If anybody wins the capitalist game, you functionally have either a one world government or depending on what level you're talking about the capitalist game. If you're talking about just in America, then you have who's really giving the orders. It can influence political direction. It can buy competitors in industry as well as in politics. Competitors against their agendas, right? It can administer surveillance through the platforms and devices that it sells. It can monitor anything through the devices that it sells. It can determine who has access to the resources required to live. That's what happens if if in the capitalist economy, a company wins. Now, that list is definitively pretty much everything communism is criticized for, right? A centralized control of resource allocation, elimination of meaningful competition, pricing as a mechanism of population management instead of, I don't know, organically market derived pricing, and surveillance infrastructure. And all of that arrives through the capitalist process the moment that a game reaches its logical conclusion. Now, communism says if you want to be a nation, you have to hire us to be your enforcement arm. But a company that has won the capitalist game says the same thing, just through a slightly different vocabulary. There is no one else available. So if you want this service at all to exist, it exists through us. The administration of rules, transactions, and political direction happens through the ownership rather than through declaration alone, and the costume is a little bit different, but the architecture is exactly the same. The homelessness pandemic growing in America is not a failure of capitalism. It is capitalism working exactly as the end game logic produces. People starving, just like in a communist regime under um, a horrible communist dictator. People are starving. But we're in the United States, so people are starving with drugs in their arms over here. But people starving with drugs in their arms are still starving. The mechanism is pricing rather than just physical exclusion from food. The result is the same. The people are starving right outside McDonald's right now. But it's pricing instead of, you know, the other way, where you can't find food for miles. Not that McDonald's is food. Anyway, the word communism, of course, again, in the sorting function, it's filed away in the dangerous drawer. You don't when you talk about this in a certain way, they say if you don't like capitalism, if you don't like America, then go to a communist nation and serve the dictator, and you tell me how you like it. Like, well, you're trying to be a communist too. You just don't know it. You don't know anything about anything. Again, I'm having a day, so I'm not being nice, but y'all be all right. Having a day right now. Now, we're about to talk about the sort of main point of today's episode. I want to bring back up the image for you guys so that you have something to look at as we talk about this. Okay. This section I call what the religion of monetary value looks like at both ends. Under the religion of monetary value, both the capitalist model and the communist model serve the same one master, which is the third class of people. But you have the haves, the have-nots, and then this third class, the order giver class, which operates in the accounting system. Excuse me, which operates the accounting system, are the operators of the accounting system, and they control the rules of the games that we play, regardless of what the game is called. The competition capitalism claims as its moral justification is fictional because the competitors are linked at the ownership level before the game starts. And that result is baked into capitalism itself because you cannot make sinful the merging of companies. So that is the end result. If anybody ever wins any capitalist thing in the future, if well, it's only really a matter of time before the American Empire really does fall. But let's say if the American Empire falls and somebody else tries capitalism in a revolutionary way, even compared to what George Washington and them came up with, 200 years ago, uh, that it will still result in the same thing because that's just the logical endpoint of a capitalist system, of any system in the religion of monetary value. Doesn't matter the system. Doesn't matter the if the system leans left, leans right, leans whatever. It doesn't matter. The equality that communism claims as its moral justification is fictional because the people administering the equality are always a separate class whose access to the resources are structured to be um, in the control seat. In both cases, the accounting was never recording real value. Doesn't matter. If you're in a capitalist or a communist regime, the accounting is never recording real value. The real value is always the work, the knowledge, the creativity, the cooperation of the human beings inside the system. And that accounting placed on top of claimed credit, right? The accounting placed on top claimed the credit. They claimed the credit for just enabling something and used that claim to justify the authority of whoever controlled the accounting, right? In our case, would be the government. The accounting, the books being balanced, the procedure being followed, justifies the authority of the government doing the thieving. We have figures like Kevin O'Leary looking at working people eating lunch and calling them stupid. A man who has profited enormously from the network game while preaching the doctrine of an honest competition game. He's probably never run a real competition in his life. I don't know. He's just fat and ugly. Now, the person buying the burrito, for 28 bucks, is living inside an economic reality that the network game has produced, where the dollar menu no longer exists, where ramen costs significantly more than it used to, where the cumulative increase in the cost of everything has outpaced the wages that the honest game was supposed to produce. The 50-year index is not advice. It is the sermon of a religion asking its congregation to defer their present human needs in service of a system that is simultaneously moving to replace them with machines and calling that progress. The person who notices this is called stupid. The person who pushes back is called a communist. And the labels do filing inside the inner storyteller of who's hearing them. And one last thing to really drive it home. There is a reason the financial system is so confusing. And it's because it makes no sense. And I mean this. What you are doing every time you participate in a financial transaction is paying an unconditional order to pay with an unconditional promise to pay. Okay? Those are the actual legal terms when you look into, you could say, the science of money. Okay? For conversational purposes, I'll just say, when you look into the science of money, when you get into the grainy details, the legal details, legal definitions, that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with unconditional promises and unconditional orders. You're dealing with what's called negotiable instruments. Legal tender. Right? Legal tender. What you're doing essentially is settling a fictional bill with a fictional promise. Right? The promise is also fictional because you can never pay with money because money doesn't exist. There's nothing in nature that has monetary value, including gold, silver, and precious metals like platinum, diamond, whatever. They don't have monetary value. There's no such real thing. It's arbitrarily decided by a very few people, by the way, of any given, whoever made the decision. Diamonds cost this much. These other crystals cost this other amount. This, gold is this much per ounce. But it's arbitrarily decided by a very few people. And it doesn't matter what they decide. It's just what they decide. Even if they say, well, aliens told me, well, God told me this is how much it's supposed to be. You're still deciding. You bought it. And there's no proof. Anyway. So I really want to drive that home. It's never real. It's never been real. There's nothing real about it, including if it's attached to precious metals. There's no such real thing. Okay, it's just accounting. All right. But you're dealing with negotiable instruments and legal tender. You are settling one fiction with another fiction. The order says, you owe me something. Here's the bill. You came to my restaurant, you ordered this, you ordered this, you ordered this, and you ordered this. We assume you got it. Here is your invoice. Here's your order, your unconditional order to pay because we provided you the thing that you came here for. And we advertise that we give that thing for a price. Right? That's an order to pay. And you pay that. And it's fictional because it's asking for money. And you pay that order with either a Federal Reserve note, which is short form for Federal Reserve produced promissory note. Okay, a note of a promise to pay later. Um, uh, you pay that order with a fiction. The instrument says, here is the promise that covers what you owe. Neither the order nor the promise to pay represent anything real. There is nothing backing the exchange at a fundamental level beyond delusion. There is only the collective agreement to treat both fictions as though they were real. And that confusion that you feel when you really try to understand how any of this actually works is not a reflection of your intelligence. It is a neutral response, a natural response, pardon me. It is a natural response of a conscious mind encountering something that genuinely makes no sense on its face. Because it doesn't make any sense. The transaction is not an exchange of real value. Again, if I give you an apple, you do not owe me an orange. If I gave you an apple, then I gave you an apple. The repetitive nature of transactions is a ritual, right? It's a repetitive ritual designed to maintain the illusion that there's real value being exchanged. Every time you swipe your card, every time you hand over the bill, transfer some sort of digital number from one ledger to another ledger electronically, you are performing a ceremony, a rite in the religion of monetary value, and that's all it amounts to, a game. And it functions like worship. And like all effective religious ritual, it does not require understanding. It only requires participation. And as you know, when it comes to us, at least here on this channel, there's a question, a very relevant question that I always like to return to, which is, what story are you going to live? And I want you to let me know in the comments, because if that story is that you don't want to hear any of this information, you just want to wait for the good guys to do the good work so that you can continue your life without acknowledging the truth about so much of your everyday that's tied up in this network game that we call the money game. If that's the story that you want to continue living, then, by all means, never come back to this channel again. But if you're ready to wake the fuck up, if you're ready to put down the toys, pick up some tools, get some work done, or another less masculine example, I guess, if you're ready to put down the game and build some community, uh, 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 put down the game controller and pick up the professional looking thing and get some shit done. Okay? Not just wake up to the information and be in awe at how awake you are now, but do some shit together. Then, subscribe and ask yourself, what story am I willing to live? And let me know in the comments. Like the video. Also, stop um, being afraid to learn the people that live around you, right? Get to know a neighbor or two, come together, try to increase that number as organically and methodically as possible, and talk to people about the truth and try to come up with local solutions for your local issues and what's locally appropriate. Let's get real. Let's get dangerous. No, I'm kidding. But let's get out of this system and into our real lives. Thank you so much for rocking with your boy. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm going to get back to my bad day. Love you. Bye.